if you go to an insurance company and ask them to be fair, you're not going to be treated fair half the time. You have to speak their language, and their language is their contract. Most people, because of the marketing of insurance companies, the marketing in America, State Farm says they're a good neighbor. Allstate says you're in good hands. Everybody talks as an insurance company to their marketing as if they're here to help you when you need them most.
Exactly.
But the reality is, when you need them most, is the most point in time where they don't want to talk with you, because that's where money's going out.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome everyone to another bonus episode of Taka Talk Season 2. Today we have a special. Today we're talking about a case study. Every time we talk about insurance, we talk about the theories and the different opinions here and there. Today we're looking at real lives being affected or not affected enough by insurance. And so our guest that I am super delighted to introduce today is a seasoned entrepreneur and expert in rebuilding efforts and fraud prevention. His name is Matt Everson. He's joining us from California. How are you, Matt?
I'm doing great. Thanks for the invitation to speak today.
Thank you so much for gracing us with your time. Do you mind just telling a bit to our audience who you are and what you do, please?
Yeah, how long do you have? I am.
We have 2 minutes.
I'm Matt. I am in California. I've lived here most of my life, and formerly was a financial advisor. Had a financial planning firm for about 20 years. As luck would have it, or maybe that's not the fate would have it, in 2017 we sold that practice about 2 months before a massive wildfire hit the town that I live in, called Santa Rosa, about an hour north of San Francisco. 5,000 homes burned down, completely burned down. There was nothing left. The fire temperatures reached about 2,000 degrees, driven by crazy strong winds, and the geographic sort of hillsides that we live in, with those winds and drought conditions that had pre-existed for 5 years, combined to make a pretty destructive wildfire. Maybe at that time the most destructive wildfire on record in the United States.
Oh my God. I've actually read that Santa Rosa was the worst affected area in all of this wildfire. We'll get into that. Yeah, we'll get into that.
So that I was on a sabbatical. I was in between my businesses. I didn't know what I was going to do next. I started volunteering for a charity called United Policyholders, which I would encourage you guys to get to know. They're very strong in the United States as far as supporting policyholder rights. And I just started to help them. And I noticed there was an issue that people that have insurance in America, and in particular California, had when they're trying to make a claim on the loss of a home. And that is to prove to the insurance company what it's going to cost to rebuild the home. It's not going to get into too much detail yet, but it was a difficulty that I knew I could work out. So I quickly found a builder that wanted to partner with me, and we formed a company called BW Builder. And since then, we've helped hundreds and hundreds of Californians, and also people around the country now, attain over $200 million in insurance company proceeds that initially the insurance companies were not going to release. That's what we do. That company actually led to a different company. It's a legal and financial technology company that protects people's estate plans. I don't think that's the topic today, but I like to start and run businesses, and I'm actually starting a third right now with my wife. She's going to be a professional fiduciary. So that's
Amazing.
A little bit about me.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Just on the last point, Murad and Shireen, the co-founders of the Cadao, are a married couple, right? So we're happy to welcome you into the family business arena.
Yeah, we met at TechCrunch last fall.
Wonderful. Mm-hmm. All right. So you said, many people might be affected by a wildfire without turning around and saying, hey, I could just fight insurance companies to make sure that, homeowners get their rights. What was the spark? Is it due to your experience as a financial advisor? You knew the ins and outs, or what really inspired you to take action?
It's an interesting serendipity. When I was just out of school, university, I worked with an insurance company that is not a very good one. They sold something called an annuity, but they sold those under false pretenses. They would sell those to seniors, And seniors thought they had something different, and they didn't. And they were constantly calling this insurance company saying, why can't I have my money back? And I used to listen to their compliance officer tell these folks why. And then they trained me, this company, how to read their contract so we could defend the company. And what I learned how to do is read the contract so I could go against that company. And I kept that knowledge with me all the time. And when the fires hit, I knew that insurance companies, some, not all, would be treating their customers in a similar way, and they were. And so because of my knowledge of internal operations at insurance companies and how to force them to stick to their contract, I was able to take the knowledge of a builder and put that together into reports that the insurance company simply couldn't deny.
That's
So the insurance
wonderful.
companies
So,
ask you for what does it cost to build, and they assume that your builder out here isn't going to be able to put together an 85-page report detailing every nail, every screw, every window in the home. Builders don't do that. They're not software guys. And so they have you. They figure, well, we'll give you an estimate. And the estimate is always 30 or 40, 50% below what it's actually going to cost. And people are stuck. So we gave them a solution.
wonderful. I absolutely love that, by the way. So you were an insider and you turned around and you did the right thing. Actually, I don't think you did anything controversial here. You did the right thing in the interest of the people, right? Now you've started at the beginning of this interview painting the picture for us, right? The Tubbs wildfire, I think around 2017. Do you just want to give the listeners or the viewers a picture? Yeah, what was it like? How was it? Do they know what started those? Where were you? How have you been personally affected? All about
Yeah,
that.
so Santa Rosa as a town is the biggest town north of San Francisco in California. There's about 150,000 people that live here. The day of October 8th or 7th, I can't remember quite, it was a Sunday. Winds were at about 50 to 60 miles an hour, which is not normal for this area. This is a very hilly area. If anybody's familiar with the Piedmont area of Italy, it's a wine growing region. And so lots of hills, beautiful area. But we have, in California at that time, had 5 years of drought. So everything was dry. We had this crazy wind. And some of that wind broke off a power line. And a power line sparked a fire. And because of the wind, it pushed this fire west across the hills down into the city at a rate of about a football field every 30 seconds. So the fire was moving at a rapid pace. There was 100 people plus 108 or so people that actually died because they couldn't get out of the way. But most people were able to evacuate, but they didn't have time to get anything. So one of the quotes from a fireman was, just chimneys and barbecues left. The entire home was turned into ash. And as you drove through the days following, which I was able to do because of some contacts I have, but most people were kept out. And you can look these pictures up online. It resembles what looks like in Hiroshima after the bomb was dropped. Everything was flattened. There was nothing left. And so it's quite emotional when you see this and you smell this and you hear this. And that night we smelled smoke. Luckily, our home in the town wasn't close to where the fires were burning. But the very next day, and for the next 3 weeks, the skies were gray, dark gray from smoke. And so it was quite an emotional devastation for the entire community. And economic turns out later to be economically devastated as well.
Exactly. Actually, that was my next point. We can imagine the devastation, right? People have spent the entire lives building, properties, building their businesses, building all of these things, and in a matter of minutes/days, it's gone, right? So, can you speak then to the economic impact? Of course, it had one, but are we able to quantify? Do you have some numbers around the
Yeah, some
magnitude?
studies have been done since those fires. The kind of fire that hit Santa Rosa is estimated to cost the city $10 billion over a decade. Whether that's property loss, whether that's tax losses from people moving away and no longer spending their money here, whether that's losses for people that weren't insured. Only about 15 to 20% of people actually own their home. So if they were insured, they got most of what they lost as far as economic damages back. But if you rented, most people didn't have renting insurance and they lost everything, and it's a complete loss. On top of that, like you say, businesses were out of business. This is pre-COVID. There was no place to have these people housed, so they had to move away. That caused businesses to go out of business because they didn't have employees. And
Mm.
the economic turmoil goes on and on and on. And what we found also adds to this is there's a second disaster that hits after disasters. And that is all of these people that come in like moths to a flame, trying to take advantage of the insurance money that is coming into the situation. So corrupt builders, corrupt lawyers, corrupt public adjusters, all promising these folks that they're going to help them. And all they're really doing is taking some of their insurance money, and then they leave and go back to wherever they came from. And that
Mm.
insurance money intended to be part of the community rebuilding is now in some other community. So it's a strange thing, America, when it comes to capitalism, but some people try to take advantage of these situations.
Actually, again, you preceded my thoughts there. So I wanted to ask, I actually wanted to say, I imagine when something like this happens, the whole country comes together, there is support pouring in from governments and personal, measures that were taken by people, either insurance or not, or whatever arrangements. Do you have some stories? Did that happen actually? Was
Oh, yeah.
that outpouring of support was there?
For sure. I mean, the community at large was very supportive of those that lost their homes and tried to help them, either having them move into their houses temporarily until they could find a place to rent, giving them clothing, giving them a night to stay over, giving them food, donating
Wonderful.
hotel rooms. There was a hashtag Sonoma Strong. Sonoma's the county that we live in. It's not just Santa Rosa that was harmed. There were other cities as well, but Santa Rosa is the main city.
Mhm.
Yeah, the community did come together. The community government acted strongly. The state government acted strongly, and the federal government acted strongly to help get people back on their feet. It is a minority of people that try to take advantage, but those people do cause more harm. But yeah, just the day after, I was down at a community center organizing donations. Donations come in floods, and really they can be somewhat of a challenge because there's nowhere to store them. The next day after the fire, it was starting to rain, and people were sending by truckload socks and clothing and things like this, which we didn't have any place to store them. So we just needed to find a place to get them out of the rain. And so there was a lot of logistical issues that, the communities back then weren't set up to handle. Santa Rosa and the leaders now, when other towns get hit by these wildfires, they go out and teach community leaders how to organize so that those kind of things don't happen again for other places in the future. And that's also the nature of the book that we've written. We wrote a book that teaches other builders how to do the estimates that we do so that we don't have to do them. So that when their community is hit by these wildfires, which will continue to happen, they don't have to have outsiders coming in and again taking some of that money and then going home.
I love that. I love that. Absolutely, actually. And sometimes people wrestle, with why these things happen. And as much as I can't say why they happen,
Mm.
I do see that sometimes when terrible stuff happens, it gives those people who went through that knowledge and experience to then help other people, in similar instances. So I absolutely applaud that. Okay, so before we get into the minority that caused the trouble,
Mm.
do you want to conclude maybe this picture setting part of the interview with, I don't know, the story of one family, or, you probably know loads of people that were affected, but are you able to, which story stood out to you the most and touched you the most?
My goodness, there's so many. You read some stories in the paper. There's a story of an elderly couple that couldn't get down the hill fast enough, and they jumped into their swimming pool. The problem with 2,000-degree fires is the water in the swimming pool gets heated up, and to the point of those people actually died in their pool. There were families that lost everything, all of their photos for 50 years or longer. The families that we helped had very similar stories every time. They were in shock. They had trauma. They had this second shock now, which their insurance company wasn't dealing with them fairly.
Oh my
And
God.
so I have this analogy. If you tell me, what is the first language in Dubai? Is it Arabic?
English and Arabic, yeah.
Arabic. If I go to Dubai and ask for a meal in French, maybe I don't get the meal. I stay hungry. But if I speak English or Arabic, I'm going to get the meal.
We'll be right back after the break.
Taka Talks brings you stories from around the world that will help you understand how crypto and Islamic finance can change our lives for the better. Subscribe and follow to keep learning.
For Arabic, I'm going to get the meal. If you go to an insurance company and ask them to be fair, you're not going to be treated fair half the time. You have to speak their language, and their language is their contract. Most people, because of the marketing of insurance companies, the marketing in America, State Farm says they're a good neighbor. Allstate says you're in good hands. Everybody talks as an insurance company to their marketing as if they're here to help you when you need them most.
Exactly.
But the reality is, when you need them most, is the most point in time where they don't want to talk with you, because that's where money's going out. And so they set up a lot of ambiguities, a lot of challenges. So that's where I was able to help a lot of people. And if you look at our website, so people were calling me and Bill, my partner, angels, different things, because simply we just knew the language to translate what was going on. And we relieved this massive anxiety that they were not going to have enough money to rebuild their home.
Let's dig into that. I think maybe twofold, right? So you have the insurance companies on one end, which we understand claims come that were from a wildfire. It doesn't go into mortality tables. They did not plan for this, right? So it's a massive loss on their end. But at the same time, as you were saying, that's how they market themselves. That's the point of having an insurance to begin with, is if this type of things happen, I know I have some kind of safety net, to not crash completely down, right? So let's look at it from the insurance point of view, and then from the members or customers, insurance customers point of view, right? So what outside of the money, because of course, was it only the money that made them, not want to help these people, or was there something else, a bigger scheme? I would imagine that an insurance company is not limited to Santa Rosa, right? So if something very terrible, or California, let's say, something very terrible happens in California, they're able to still have funds from all over the country to make up for that loss. So is it really only about losing money, or is there more to it?
Well, we can be cynical, or we can try to paint the picture, right? So the insurance companies, by and large, would tell you that it's not about money. They had 5,000 claims overnight. They're not staffed for that. Sure. And we bumped into some companies that were simply overworked and were happy to have our estimates for their claimants. They just didn't have enough employees to help these folks get these estimates done. On the other hand, we bumped into several insurance companies, one major insurance company that I'm not going to name here just because they'll sue me. But they are a nationwide company. They claim to be good neighbors. They're not. They have a very distinctive internal maliciousness designed to harm people. And I can prove it, and I hope one day we will. Can you
please substantiate this without giving us a name or anything that could reveal them, but substantiate this with examples so the audience can understand?
Well, the plan is like this. So back in 1994, there was a major earthquake in California, and the insurance companies lost a lot of money from that. They approached a consulting company called McKinsey Corporation. How do we next time not lose as much? And the discovery from McKinsey was, why don't you just stop telling people how to file claims? So in corporate economics, we call this a designed ambiguity. And if you look at American insurance policies for homeowners, they're very specific because lawyers write them. They're specific about what's covered and what's not covered, and what terms are and what modifications are, and all these endorsements, 50 pages long. There's one page, maybe two sometimes, about how to file a claim, and it's very ambiguous. And that's not on accident, because lawyers don't do anything by accident. So they would have to prove to us why that is an accident. But when someone has a fire, they provide no guidance. They give no training to their adjusters as to how to help people through this. In fact, adjusters, by and large, are discouraged from telling people exactly. There's a great movie called The Incredibles. I don't know if you've seen it.
I've not.
It's a Pixar movie, so it's animated. But there's a scene at the very beginning where superheroes are told they can't be superheroes anymore. They have to go get real jobs. So one of them goes and gets a job as an insurance claims adjuster. And he's with a little old lady who's in tears because the insurance company won't pay her for a loss. And he leans in and he says, listen, I'm not supposed to tell you how to do this, but if you go upstairs to the 3rd floor and ask so-and-so for a certain form that I can't tell you what it is, but it's this number, maybe somebody can help you. Do you understand what I'm trying to tell you? And she
How
finally gets
wonderful.
it. She goes
What's
upstairs.
the name of that character?
It's Mr. Incredible, I think.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
I think people would have called you Angel and Mr. Incredible as well, because that's exactly what you were doing. Right.
Yeah, so they at the time the movie came out, people thought, oh, that's funny, but that's not real. It's very real. Internally, you have 2 departments at an insurance company: money in and money out. You can really break it down that simply. Money in is where the best marketing and sales people exist, the best executives exist. And on the money outside, you have a lot of folks that maybe can't be legally fired yet. You have a lot of folks that maybe aren't the best and the brightest. And you have a lot of people that are upset with their life and their job because what they're being told to do is tell people that have lost something that they can't have their insurance. It's a very difficult job. I feel sometimes for these people because they're in places in America where that's the best paid job. And there isn't an alternative. They have a family. They have a home that they have to pay for. And if they left that job because of ethical and moral reasons, there isn't any other options for them that pays as well. So they feel stuck. And so I don't have a lot of animosity for them. It's just the way it is. But anyways, after that earthquake, they designed a system of, we're not going to help you figure this out. You're going to have to figure it out on your own. But nobody outside knows how to figure these things out either. This isn't normal. When you go to the doctor, you don't expect them to say, I don't know what's bothering you, Layla. Why don't you figure it out? When you go to a lawyer and ask for some legal advice, they don't say, I don't know. What do you think?
A refund.
And so there's a lot of misdirection, a lot of misguidance, a lot of half-truthing. They'll hand you these estimates that are not anywhere close to reality as to what it's going to cost to rebuild. And they say, well, if you don't like that, you can find one yourself. And they know full well people can't. And so this is the process. So
why
is it about money? I think it's about money.
Thank you so much, Matt. Can you speak to why people can't find right estimates themselves?
Yeah.
Before you stepped in your company, like, why was that vacuum to begin with?
Well, first of all, to do this, just building estimates like this, just as a business, it doesn't really work unless you've got a lot of fires, right? It's not a profitable business. So this is why it's just a one of my other businesses, right?
Okay.
The second thing is builders are builders. They work with their hands. They're not working in spreadsheets, in computer software. And when I ask a builder in America to build me a home, he's going to look at my building plans and say, I think I can build that for $500 a square foot. So if I'm building a 2,000 square foot home, he gives me a contract for $1 million. He doesn't take the time to tell me how many nails he's going to buy, how many boards he's going to buy, how much drywall he's going to buy, how many roofing shingles he's going to buy. He doesn't. Why? Why would he do that? Nobody needs to know that. He knows in his mind, because he's a builder, what it's going to cost with his profit to build the home. And that's what he does. So when the insurance company says to the claimant, hey, prove your loss, the builder does the same thing. He says, here, we'll build that home at $500 a square foot. And the insurance company says, we need more detail. And the builder says, well, how much detail do you need? And they show them their estimate, which is 85 pages long. And the builder goes, "That's what are you talking about? We don't do that. I don't know how to do that." And now they're stuck because they're being told it's $200. I mean, $500 a square foot. The insurance company is telling them, no, we think it's $300 a square foot. And unless you can come up with some data to prove us otherwise, you'll just have to take our word for it. It puts these people in this very difficult position, and builders themselves, especially after a wildfire where 5,000 homes have burned down, they don't want to sit behind a computer. They want to go build. It's the most profitable time in their life. They're not going to sit here and make estimates. They're going to sit here and make homes. And so the insurance companies, in my opinion, know this. And so they've built the system so that people feel stuck. And then they get anxious. And then after a while of arguing and yelling and screaming and stuff, they give up and they take what the insurance company's offering. Now, this is
That's
just
a
my
that's a
opinion. I have to say
that
this because, I think, prove it. I've got some data, but we haven't proven that in a case of, in the court of law. But we've got a lot of data that indicates this is true. And if it weren't true, we could point to when you had a claim, here's A through Z what you need to do. We could point to employees helping people, not harming them. We could point to employees saying, this is what you've got to do, not half-truthing people. Do you know what a half-truth is? Yeah.
yeah, you tell
So
half of it pretty
yeah,
much.
I'll give you back to these annuities, right? I watched an insurance agent sell up an annuity to an old lady one time, and he said, and she asked, "Can I take my money out of that like I can the CD at the bank?" "Sure, you can," he said.
But it did
There
not
was
mention
another part to the sentence. You can, but
requirements.
you will lose 10% of what you're putting in. So if you put $100,000 in and you want to take it out before the next 10 years, you're only going to get 90,000 back. That's really what she was asking. But technically, she's just asked, can I take my money out? Sure,
Mm,
you can
mm,
take your
mm,
money out.
mm, mm.
It's a half-truth. It's a misdirection. And it's not fair. And that is, people expect fairness, and they shouldn't.
Definitely, very, very clear. And just to speak to why I was asking and why it was not very clear for me, in the beginning was that I live in Dubai, but I'm originally from Central Africa, so we have a completely different culture when it
Hmm.
comes to building, right? It's you paying for the actual materials and stuff needed, and the builder builds.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, like the
Hmm.
actual building, what I mean.
Right.
So we're more into the details and stuff, but it makes absolute sense. So I can see very well how your company could fill this vacuum. So we've looked at it from the insurance company's point of view. Understood that?
And just to add a little
Yeah.
bit, to be fair to the insurance company, they're going to turn around. If they give me a check for $700,000 to rebuild my home, which may sound weird to people around the world listening to this, it costs $500 a square foot plus here in California to build today, just so you know. So if they give me 700, 500, 700, whatever, the insurance company turns around and they make a claim to what's called reinsurance.
Yeah.
Right? And their reinsurance company is asking for the same data. How come you paid that
Mm-hmm.
700,000 out? Where's the details? So that's, to be fair, they do need to prove. And a lot of people, I can tell you this, we did over 300 estimates. 90% of people asked me, hey, these insurance companies are rich. How can I get more money? More money than you deserve?
Mm.
More money than I deserve? No, I mean, it doesn't hurt anybody. It does hurt them. And
They're
so
rich. They're
there is
rich.
insurance fraud.
No,
So,
it's still bad to steal from rich people. Stealing is
well, the
stealing.
insurance companies, this is why some of these complicated situations have come up, is because they're trying to prevent insurance fraud. And they want you to prove the loss. We can make a case that they should make this easier, and they should. But at the same time, Americans are often looking for more than they deserve in these
Got that. So
situations.
let's turn then to the Americans who were affected. On the
Mhm.
end, what the picture I'm getting right now is, either your company was genuine but they were short staffed because nobody could predict something like this, so it was still difficult for you. Or you were working against a giant of the insurance company that was not interested in being fair, and didn't want to lose all of that money overnight, pretty much. Now, do you have, again, just some stories to substantiate? I love that. I would have called you an angel, to be honest, if you helped me get my payout or the one I deserve. So, do you have just two stories of people in both categories, or we can just do one if you want, however much you are comfortable with sharing? What
Yeah.
was their journey like, and the ups and downs, and finally how you were able to get them what
So
they
what
deserved?
happens after a fire like this is they initially send somebody out, an adjuster, and the adjuster is very friendly. Oh, we are here to help you. Everything's going to be okay. With certain companies, that was just an act. There was one company in particular that people, generally speaking, averaged 8 adjusters over an 8-month period. Every time they got a new adjuster, they had to start over again by design. Now, that
I
same
hate that.
company, yeah, that same company would just cut a check to about 45% of their people. Just big check. Here's all your money. So now those people are out there saying, this company's great. What are you talking about? And then randomly they select another 40-something% of people that they're going to just hammer.
Oh
You got to prove it. You got 8 adjusters. We don't believe you. This isn't right. We're going to misdirect you. The common misdirections were when they would find us, we would hand the estimate in. Well, you can't use his estimate. Why not? He's not the guy building your home. Where's that in the contract? It's not in the contract. It was a lie. Their numbers are wrong. Why are our numbers wrong? We build homes here in California. You don't build homes. You don't know how much it costs to build here. Why are our numbers wrong? You have to prove us wrong. So it was constantly trying to denigrate us until we had to file a cease and desist order with one of these companies to stop damaging and defaming our good name. And they did. But their adjusters still do some strange things. And they just flat out lie to people half the time. There was a case just recently, where there was water damage, not a fire damage. So this poor family in California, they had about this much, 2-3 inches of water all over their kitchen floor. The plumber comes out. This is right before Christmas time, which is holidays here in America. And they detect with they have these cool things that can push up against the wall and see how much moisture's in there. So the moisture detector showed that the moisture's coming right from behind the sink, which is what you would expect where the pipe broke. The adjuster from the insurance company comes out the next day, and we have this on video. We're videotaping him telling the plumber that the plumber's wrong, telling the homeowners they're wrong, and telling them that the pipe broke inside of the foundation. And the reason he was saying this is because that's excluded. If there's a pipe breaking in the foundation, no coverage. So we have older homes in America that are built with something called asbestos sometimes, and we have laws now that you can't just tear into those walls. You have to do that in what's called an abatement way, so that nobody gets lung damage when they're doing this. So they had to wait a few days because it's holidays to get those guys out. About a week later, they break into the walls, they turn on the water, and there's gushing water coming out of a broken pipe. Now, if that's the cause of the damage, it's covered. So the next day, the insurance company sends out a letter denying the claim, saying it's in the foundation. So the owner of the home said,
despite the evidence,
despite the video evidence, despite the plumber's evidence, then they say another letter. Listen, when we bought this home 10 years ago, we took the pipes out of the foundation and repiped around so that this couldn't happen. There's no way a pipe broke in the foundation. Oh, well, then it's a pinhole long-term leak. Pinhole meaning very small leak, right? Well, if you have a long-term leak internally inside of a wall, the other thing that happens is you have mold. There was no mold. We broke open the walls. We saw that there's no mold. The pinhole leak can't cause this much water all over the floors. And if it's a pinhole leak, your water bill is going to be up over the months and months and months that it's running. So then, these poor people had to hire a lawyer to force the insurance company to pay. Most people can't do that because of the math. Okay. The damages that we assessed was about $50,000 to $100,000 worth of damages.
Wow.
Okay. Hiring a lawyer is going to cost about $50,000. So are you going to hire somebody for $50,000 to go get $50,000? Or are you going to take the $25,000 the insurance company is offering you? And this is the math the insurance companies use against people. And so that's pretty cynical. And again, that's the same company I'm thinking of this whole time. They have an institutional maliciousness, but they're hard to sue because the insurance companies in America have made it that they can't be sued as an entity. They have to be sued as a state by state thing. So
just in that story, the family won finally. Tell us there was a nice ending. Did they win?
It's still working through court right now. They are definitely going to win. Because of our estimate and because of the logical compilation that we put together, it can't be the pipes in the floor because there are no pipes in the floor. It can't be a pinhole leak because there is no mold and it caused way too much water coming out suddenly. It has to be this pipe that you can see on the video gushing water. And so, yeah, they will win. I'm positive they're going to win. But the first case we did, the first estimate we did, this same company sent their top claims representative in the entire country out to ask the claimants, where did they get this estimate? They were shocked. And it turns out that those two people were lawyers, so they could help formulate our response. We got the estimate from local builders. they didn't understand how somebody had come up and beaten them at their game, and they got money. And so, but here's what was really fun. So most of the time, homeowners insurance contracts policies say, we'll pay you, but after you incur the cost. So you have to prove that you've actually rebuilt, which is fine. That's fair. That's how they mostly work. Because of my knowledge in reading these contracts, though, I noticed at the back of the policy there was a California addendum. And that addendum said, you prove your loss, we'll pay. They forgot a verb. Sometimes lawyers mess up. The verb is when you incur. So they forgot that. And so we're arguing with this national leader of claims, and he finally agrees that these numbers are more accurate than theirs. And I said, okay, great. Now turn to the back of the policy. And he turns to the back of the policy. And I said, now, I'm not a lawyer. These two guys are, but I'm not. But the way I read this, and you've just agreed that we've proven the loss, you got to pay these guys before they build. And he did, though they had to. And so we shared that with everybody in town that had a policy with that company. And
I think they quickly changed the wording in their contract.
Oh yeah, the new policies are changed for sure. But that cost them tons and tons of money because we were able to prove their own policy against them. So yeah, that's one of my most famous fun stories, is that we showed everybody in town these this addendum. If you're with this company, you don't have to build first. They'll just, because a lot of people they don't want to rebuild. But that's what the policy says they have to do to get the money. And so showing them this page was able to show them, hey, you guys just prove your loss, and then they have to pay you.
That's it's a double-edged sword.
The company does not like us.
Yeah, I can imagine. But to go into, of course, the insurance company policy wordings are very, very important. But as much as you try to hide stuff there to defend yourself, you one day you come across somebody who knows what he's talking about, and they're able to read it better than you actually, and to force your hand into something that you had not perceived. So yeah, right. Let's talk now. So that's from. Which percentage, just to close the picture on this, which percentage of people you would say, the ones that came to you, for example, you would say had a good ending to their struggle with the insurance companies?
Well, look, the majority of people in town that lost a home and had insurance, this didn't happen to them. The only people that talked to us were the ones that were up against the wall. Their insurance company was not dealing fairly with them. So I have to be fair to the insurance companies. Most of them, after some time, paid people what they deserved. The folks that worked with us, our estimates are undefeated. So every single one of our clients has a happy ending because they came to us with a situation that they didn't know how to get that meal in Dubai. And we gave them the language translation in order to eat. And so I make that simple because it takes time. Sometimes it takes 6 months to 12 months. I mean, there's a case that I've been working for 3 years with this one individual because his insurance adjuster is what we call in American English pot committed. He's pushed all his chips in. He's lied about everything. So if he admits now that he owes this money, he's going to be in trouble legally. And so he's going to stick to his guns until it goes to court. But for the majority of folks that worked with us, the grand majority, when our estimate comes in, they can work with their builder, and their builder can show now exactly what it's going to cost to rebuild the home. And then they can back that up with their own receipts when they buy the materials and their own receipts when they hire the plumbers and the electricians. And if you walk it through this way, then the insurance company's tricks are removed if they're trying to be tricky. And again, some companies just have some incompetence, right? And you just have to help them. I was... just because I went through this a little bit, I was in Mexico for the New Year to have a little vacation. And the day before we were scheduled to fly back, Boeing had a problem. The side blew off of a plane in America. And so they canceled every flight the next day that was that kind of plane, which happened to be my flight back home. But I bought trip insurance from a company called I think, well, I better not say it. It's the world's largest insurance company based out of Germany. And I get on the phone with them at midnight on a Sunday saying, hey, look, I can't get a hold of my airline. They're too busy. It's Sunday night at midnight. We have to be home tomorrow. What can I do? What does my policy cover? And the person on the phone said, well, if you get on the internet and book another flight, you can spend up to $10,000 booking those flights. And I said, I'm pretty good with insurance. I don't remember seeing that in my policy. Are you sure? Oh, yes, I'm sure. $10,000. I said, you're looking at my policy, and I want to be very clear. This call's recorded, correct? It's correct. You're recording this call. Okay, this call's recorded. I want to be very clear that if I go online and I spend up to $10,000, I will be reimbursed by your company for those costs because it's going to be expensive, last-minute flight. Yes, sir, $10,000. You have a $10,000 budget to purchase flights on your own. I said, now I don't have to do that through your company or your travel arrangements, anything like that. No. You better get on there now because everybody's going to be looking for flights. Fair enough. I write down his name, the time we called, what exactly he said. I go book some flights. It cost about $2,500. I get home and I get on their website and file a claim. And it's denied. Right out of the gate, just denied. We don't cover that. And I look at the policy. I can see the policy doesn't cover that. And so I didn't have access to the policy when I was in Mexico. But back home, I'm looking at it going, yeah, it doesn't cover that. However, I was very clear with the guy on the phone, and he was very clear with me. So I get on the phone 4 different times with 4 different supervisors, and they all tell me I'm a liar. And I say, listen, just pull the phone call. Pull the phone call. I'm not trying to get something I don't deserve. I worked under your employee's advice to buy these tickets, right? They still denied it. So I had to file a claim with the State Department of Insurance in California. And at that point in time, because it was just $2,500, the insurance company did their own math. Do they want to spend more time fighting this and dealing with the State Department of Insurance, or do they want to just cut me a check? So they sent me a letter saying, your policy doesn't cover this, but because you're such a good customer, we're going to pay for it anyways. So they didn't admit wrongdoing. They didn't admit that they were being unfair. They didn't admit that they looked at that call and thought, oh, they didn't apologize either. They did send me a check. Now, 99% of people in America wouldn't have been able to figure that out. But I used their policy and the law against them, and I won out. But it took easily 15 hours of effort on my part, and because I knew what I'm doing. This is the game that they play. This is the game that they play.
It's all about knowing your rights. And the masses
And that's
are
hard.
not well informed in terms of the legal rights they have in this situation. So I wanted to ask you, this is an incredible impact you're having in Santa Rosa, but did you then export that, sort of knowledge or help to communities outside of Santa Rosa?
Yes.
Take your time.
Want to show this. So
Wonderful.
this is the
Yes,
book.
the book. Correct.
When Bill, who's BW Builder, Bill Wallace, he's the builder. I can build an IKEA cabinet. He can build a home. When Bill and I first started doing this, it was simply to help people in Santa Rosa. And if you do this properly, you're intaking some of their trauma every time you help them. It's very draining. And I can't just get on the phone and say, listen, lady, I've heard this 100 times. Shut up. I'm going to tell you how this works, right? Then that's not going to work. I have to listen. I have to intake. I have to hear them. Because otherwise, I'm just like all the other guys selling something to them that they don't need. And so we didn't want to do this when we were done with Santa Rosa. We don't want to do it in other cities in Santa Rosa. We don't want to do it in other places around the country. And so United Policyholders, I mentioned them, they're nationwide, helping people understand their insurance rights. Really a great charity. I'd encourage you, and if you want an introduction to Amy Bach, she'd be an unbelievable guest for your show.
Amazing.
Amazing. She's the executive director of that organization. So what Bill and I said, because I know how to write. Bill's a builder. He can write for sure, but he doesn't write books. I said, let's write a book. Let's do this. Let's give away our secrets. Now, this is not business 101. If I wanted to, as a businessman, okay, this company that Bill and I created, we could scale it up, and it would be a multi-million-dollar revenue company. In order to do that, we'd have to start to really hound people after the disasters, to sell to them. And that's not what we did this for. We did this to help people. So what we said was, let's write this book. This book teaches a builder how to do what we did, how to delineate the details in a proper way, what language you need to use with the insurance companies to get what you want, how to do this from A to Z. So if anybody wants to know how we did this, they buy our book for $35. The profits from the sale of that book benefit the charity. The charity and I now have a program so that if an individual community gets harmed like Santa Rosa did, we set up a training for builders. So the builders
incredible.
get on, just like you and I are on the web right now talking, and we teach them with the book how to do this. And then they get the book and they can refer back to the book. We have free software on our website that they can download. It's an Excel spreadsheet basically, but we've set it up so that it's works with these kind of estimates. And we give them the knowledge they need to, if they've got somebody in their office, and typically they do, they're building using their hands for nails and stuff, but there's always somebody in the office doing the books, doing the payroll, doing the organization. And they can take these lessons we write about in the book, and now we can pay it forward. Now we can give this idea away so that the next people, and there will be many, 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 we can talk about wildfires and why they're impacting in America. But this is going to continue to happen. It's already happening today, right now in California. There's a wildfire burning in a community. So these problems will continue to exist because of climate change, because of the fact that in California, they decided to ignore science and build homes in areas where fires have burned for millennia. They have a combination of a lot of things have come into this, both science and greed. And so this problem is not going to stop. And it's going to continue for the foreseeable future until we learn not to build in places where there's fires, until we learn to use the science that can protect homes from these fires, and until we learn that maybe we want to stop polluting the air so much and bring this planet back to a more normal stasis. But those are,
Again,
I don't know.
you preceded my question there, because I wanted us to look, towards the future now, and to say which role do you think, and you've already started touching upon it, but which roles do you think two things will have? Number one, it would be the regulators, right? Government regulators and stuff like that. And number two, technology, right? So how do you foresee those two different elements impacting the future of these of this area, or this sort of claims happening, and how they dealt with?
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot of faith in our government regulators. Here's why. In California, in particular, the majority of tax revenue is earned through property taxes. So you have a home that's purchased for $1 million. And I know, again, that sounds funny to people, but that's the average price of home in the Bay Area. And that would generate for the state somewhere in the neighborhood of $20,000 a year in property taxes. Okay, so you have that. You have a very powerful real estate lobby, because a realtor that sells that home for $1 million just made $50,000 commission. So they want to sell homes. You have this banking industry that backs the sale of those homes with loans. And in order to give someone a loan on a $1 million home, they require that the home be insured against loss. So you have a very powerful Wall Street lobby, you have a very powerful realtor lobby, and then you have the people that actually sell insurance. And they are all against each other's best interests now, because the insurance companies want to price their products differently in California, and the regulators don't know how to deal with that. The insurance companies are using technology. They are using AI. They are now finally using things that they should have been using for 30 years. Now they are realizing, oh my gosh, we've insured all of this stuff that we have no idea what we've insured. We better get out there and do our job as an underwriter. And so they're canceling people en masse in California. Just the zip code I live in, this one company, State Farm, canceled everybody in that zip code. That leaves about 500 people in this neighborhood without homeowners insurance.
And
And so
if I continue from the logic you gave before, if they cannot have insurance, then they cannot have the loan, and then
that's
they
right.
cannot buy homes, right?
So if you have the loan and your insurance is canceled and you don't get other insurance, the bank gets your home.
Oh my God.
If you can't find insurance and you're trying to buy a home, you're not buying the home. That locks up your real estate sales. That locks up your banks. So both of those industries are screaming at California politicians to fix this. So what California politicians are doing is bending over backwards to give the insurance companies everything they want. So I don't have a whole lot of faith in the regulatory situation. I do have a little bit more faith in capitalism, even though I'm not the biggest fan of capitalism. But it's a big market, California. The insurance companies do want to be here. They are going to figure out a different way to be here. And that's going to be a different calculus. It's going to be a different underwriting. It's going to be a more attentive underwriting. They're going to look a little bit more carefully at homes surrounded by trees and hills. They're going to look a little bit more carefully at what the state of the home is. Is the roof in good condition? If I could be president for a day, I'd stop all of this. I'd say we're no longer building into these areas. If you have a home that's in one of these fire safe areas, we're going to give you some tax credits to improve its fire protectiveness. But you're going to either do that or sell the home and get out of there. And so that it's not all on the insurance companies. And that's just impossible. You can't collect enough premium to rebuild a $1 million home. So it has to be a combination of people understanding that they don't just get free insurance. People don't understand insurance. When I was a financial advisor, I had a friend, a very good friend, who smoked, and he was very overweight. And he was the same age as me, and he wanted life insurance. And I said, well, your life insurance is going to be 3 times as much as mine. That's not fair. I said, what do you mean fair? He goes, it's not fair. I deserve life insurance just like you. I said, no, you don't. It's not fair because it's not fair. It's business. If you die, they have to pay your spouse $1 million. Okay? So they want to make sure the chances of you dying. And the chances of you dying are much greater than me right now. So that's not fairness. It's just business, right? Americans, by and large, don't understand this concept. They think it should just be fair. And so, but that's not how that works, right? You understand actuaries, you understand pricing, you understand underwriting. When you're looking at these homes as an actuary or an underwriter, you're freaking out. It's $1 million to rebuild a home. This is craziness. We're not going to be able to price for that. So they are pulling out right now and only insuring homes that don't have a great chance of burning down. And the only way I think going forward is that you're going to have a situation where the insurance companies work with the states so that you have state credits. Like right now, if you put solar panels on your house, you can get a tax credit. You should get a tax credit for putting proper venting on the home, for putting proper windows on the home, for putting proper roof, for putting proper what we call hardy board, cement boarding so that it doesn't catch on fire. There's a lot of things you can do to fortify a home, but it's expensive.
And so as they are pulling out, my understanding is that the communities are putting pressure on the government, or the different lobbies that are behind as well are also putting pressure. But did you see something organic, grassroots from the community itself to say, okay, these insurance companies are leaving, we're going to do something, we're going to organize ourselves to face this issue?
It's a great idea, Leila. What you're speaking of is mutual insurance. That's what you guys are doing in Africa.
Yes.
It would work perfectly for this. However, I hate to keep bashing on my fellow Americans. It's really hard to get Americans to agree if the sky's blue right now. We have a very divided community in America today. And there's not enough time on the podcast to describe why. But if we had 10 people in my neighborhood that needed insurance, first of all, that's 10 homes. So that's $10 million of insurance we've got to fill for our company, right? It's a lot different when we're dealing with a community in Africa that needs $5,000 to insure, right? So $10 million, how do we do that? Does everybody put $1 million in? Nobody has $1 million. So do we assume that not all the homes will burn down and we might only need just 1 million? Still, how are we going to get to 1 million? So again, the government would have to start to seed these programs, and you could. That's, I think, the biggest challenge in American insurance. In the mid-90s, mutual insurance companies were the majority of companies. and they suddenly were allowed to go become what are called publicly traded, stock held, investor bought. And as soon as that happened, they all did it. There are very few left that are mutual. And when they did that, all of the calculations change. A mutual insurance company is looking at what's for the good of the whole, not profits.
Exactly. So that,
And
by the way, the different DAOs we launch, or the mutual protection funds, are global. Yeah, they're not only in Africa. But then
you can see the numbers, how challenging they are.
exactly,
when you have
how costly it is in California. But the only thing I wanted to say is exactly that, right? So when it's the people doing it for their own sake, they're very attentive, they're very careful, right? It's not about making money here. It's about making sure that if that happens to my home or my neighbor's home, my friend's home, that there are funds to be able to pay for the claim, and stuff like that. So I think that's a path to explore. But of course, as you said, it's so intricate, it's so complex when you talk about the American scene, and actually all over the world. Each part of the world has its own complexities.
Yeah, I think there's something out there called parabolic insurance that might be helpful. These are situations where the insurance company eliminates claims altogether. You purchase insurance, let's say at 3 different levels. For $1 million home, we'll sell you 500,000, 750, or $1 million. If you buy 500, it's X dollars. If you buy 750, it's a little bit more. And if you buy, and there's no claims. Based on our monitoring, based on the damages pre-agreed, which we can use the blockchain and AI for, if a certain amount of damage happens, we just give you $500,000. And the idea is we're eliminating this massive fat that's inside these insurance companies, which is their claims departments. Don't spend any time. Don't get sued. Don't do all this different stuff to try and make billions of dollars unfairly. Just make a contract, pay it off. That, again, if you asked 100 Americans if they know the difference between a mutual insurance company and not, they would say
there is a
99
learning curve.
I don't know.
There is a learning curve. So we can be visionaries, and see how these things are possible. But you're absolutely right. There is a learning curve for the masses to understand, the vision, and to be willing to adhere to it. Thank you so much, Matt. 1 hour has flown by so fast.
I know. I didn't mean to go.
It was super entertaining. I love what you've been doing. Please tell us, where can people find you? Where can people purchase the book? You can
go to www. I'll put it in the chat. bwbuilder.com, and there you can find ways to buy the book. Buying the book supports this charity who has a hard time raising money. So it's a great purchase if anybody's interested in the American way of doing insurance claims for rebuilding homes. I don't know that it has a whole lot of application anywhere else in the world. But if you wanted to buy it, you can go to that website and you can find it there.
The American audience, buy the book and thank us and Matt later. But actually, you can thank us now. Like, comment, subscribe, and share this episode. Thank you so much, Matt. Appreciate it so much. Have a great one there. Bye.